Welcome back to the Cerebral Palsy Perspective. I'm Chad Williams, here with my co-host, Daryl Perry. Today we wanted to talk about something real. We wanted to talk about experiences from childhood that stay with us and using those experiences as fuel versus weight. Growing up with cerebral palsy, I had moments where, kids mocked me. They mocked the way I walked, or they threw things at my feet. They made me feel a certain way, like I didn't belong. And unfortunately, there were adults that failed me along the way too. Those moments were painful. And even now, years later, I still remember some of those moments. And in some ways, those moments became motivation for me. But I think that raises an important question. How do we use these painful experiences as fuel without carrying them as weight? So I want to talk about the different elements to that. And Daryl, when you think about experiences from your past, especially growing up with CP, how do you feel those experiences have stayed with you over time?
I would say overall, I always felt like I was behind. Even from the very beginning, when I would hear the story of how I was diagnosed with CP because I was missing benchmarks. I was 2 years old and I was tested and I was diagnosed with this. And then when I went to school, preschool was fine because I feel like I was in a school with a lot of other kids that had special needs. But then when I went to kindergarten and started there, and then as I was getting pulled out for OT and PT, and the kids started to see even more. Oh, the kid that walks differently is actually doing different things from the rest of us, and a lot of much like when we have these topics and you talk about what it was like in childhood, I'm just nodding along because I'm like, yeah, the bullying with the name calling, but the shoving and the throwing things and just the mocking. And you're right, kids and adults. So, but that was the thing. I always wanted to fit in. I always wanted to prove myself. And I think I got to the point with a lot of this stuff where I felt like I was on the other side of it most of the time. There is one part of life work where, because I had people calling me retarded most days of my life growing up. So, yes, my CP, supposedly hadn't really impacted my mental capacities, but I'm hearing this every day and I would feel like, oh, I have to show them. I eventually got to the other side on that one. But the other stuff, I still like the negative thoughts will still kind of pull at you. We've talked about when we do races and stuff. Yes, I'm proud of the fact that I finished the races. I'm glad to be the last person finishing, but there's kind of a bit of a mental tug of war as that's going on because, here we are, we're still behind and all this. And I think it's important to talk about the reality of it because yes, we overcome it, but it's not 100%. And kind of what you alluded to, it's not, we use it as fuel, but there's a fine line with that too, how we use it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's, like you said, there's certain moments that just don't leave. Public embarrassment and being different as a kid shapes your identity, and there's pain that lingers with that, and sometimes some of those moments last for decades. But the motivation that's created from that, and I've dealt with some of this too, but it's wanting to prove something, but at the same time it creates some discipline, and it's created drive for me, resilience that I maybe wouldn't have had. Some of the pain that I went through is part of the reason I push today, but there's, like you said, there's a line there where it can become like unhealthy. And so that's, I think, part of the main part of this is like, you can be in that mindset where you're like living to prove them wrong. like you're constantly in a prove them wrong mindset, or you're chasing approval from ghosts. You're staying angry. Um, you're letting these old voices from your past impact your current decisions. Um, those things can all be unhealthy. There's a line there, so you have to figure out how do you get away from that part of it and find the healthy balance where you're able to do, positive with it. And it's remembering without reliving, or it's, honoring growth, or choosing purpose over revenge. And I think for myself, that's been a big thing. Like we have this podcast together where we're able to share perspective, and I have my scholarship now, and the race that I help sponsor. These are all things that are positive. So I was able to sort of spin those negative experiences, and now I'm doing something good with them. So I think it started as fuel in a negative way. Like, I'll show them, but now I'm building something meaningful, the podcast, the scholarship, my running journey. And so I've been in the unhealthy space, and I've been able to shift that and do some positive things with it. And I think that's the key to what I'm trying to dial down to for today.
Yeah, and I think you brought up a lot of really good points, and the one thing is fighting ghosts. And I think one way to really truly make sure that you're not fighting ghosts is to start playing your own game. Because if we're still doing activities as an adult where we're trying to fit in, we're trying to be part of the crowd, even if we can get on the other side of this stuff most of the time, which, by the way, is the healthy thing to do, and anybody that can do it should be commended. There's still this pool that's going to be there. This is actually why, because like I'll get parents of kids with special needs that'll be like, well, what would you tell? What's your advice for parents that are raising these kids with CP? And it's like, if they show an interest in something that they're curious about early, really help them lean into it. Because if they find something that they're really interested in, they then can find their way of doing it. And I mean, we talk about this, we're doing hard things our way. And when you're truly figuratively and literally running your own race, well, then you're not behind, because you're truly not competing with anyone. And for me, even when I started, I talk about how I've worked in the fitness industry for the better part of 20 years while I was doing, going to school for marketing, and then I started working in marketing and advertising. When I started, after I'd worked in the gym, after I was an adult, I was probably close to 30 years old. I'd got my personal training certification. I had done a couple of things out on my own, but I couldn't get hired by a gym as a personal trainer. I found a couple studios that would take a chance on me, but I was running into the same frustration of, I don't look the part. I don't fit what people would expect. And this again was probably coming up on 15 years ago now, close to it. And what gradually happened is I had to find my way. So my whole thing in health and fitness now is talking about consistency and demonstrating that, and having a genuine belief in yourself, because I think most people, when they're trying to change their body, really want to feel better about who they are, and then actually appreciating who and what I see in the mirror. And I feel like when I say that, when I say, hey, appreciate who you see in the mirror, coming from me versus like, I don't know, some guy that looks like Josh Allen. There we go. Never thought we'd do that reference on the podcast. Yeah. Like, that's not going to land with people. But when it comes from me, it has a little bit more teeth. So I mean, I hope for anyone that you find a path that is truly unique to yours. It doesn't necessarily have to be, completely unique, you're not the only Spartan runner in the world. You're not, I'm not the only person that works in the fitness space, but you find your own way and you do things your own way. And I think when you do that, then you're no longer, in my case, running behind like I thought, like I always was. You're just you're just doing your thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's a struggle too. It's something that, you'll shift back and forth. I say like, oh, I'm doing all these great things now, and they're coming from a positive place, and they are. That doesn't mean I'm not going to ever have days where I drop back down into the negative side of the things that I went through. When I first started running, there was that was a mindset for a long time. Like, I'll show them, like, look what I'm doing now. I'll show them. And now it's 4 years later, and I've gotten through that, and I've been able to build off of that and do all these good things from a better place, not from a place of constantly wanting to prove people wrong from 30 years ago. But that doesn't mean I won't have days where I drop back into that mindset. I think that's a human thing. So I would just say, if there's something from your past that still lives within you, it doesn't make you weak, but you deserve to decide what role it plays. And hopefully you can find a way to do that. Pull it from a negative space within you and turn it into doing something positive.
Yeah, that's the whole game. It's the whole thing.
Yeah. That was my message for today. I think that was, I think it's probably something that a lot of us work through, and you don't even have to be somebody with CP to have to work through that. There's experiences that people have to go through, all facets of life, all different things that they have to work through. Those things can creep up from a lot of different ways. And so hopefully it's something that a lot of people can relate to, but I think it's an important thing to work through.
It is, and much like a lot of our discussions, I mean, we get these topics and we dive right into them. And I mean, it's funny, when we first started the podcast, it's like, all right, well, we need to go for like a half hour. We have this time limit that we wanted. But I mean, honestly, the big thing when we talk about stuff like this, guys, is we want to hear from you. We want to hear, and again, we talk about the platform or the structure that we have where you guys can come on and share your stories and share your experiences, but that's not the only way that you can reach out to us. I think one of the biggest things with CP for me with cerebral palsy has always been like, I felt like there wasn't anybody like me growing up, and that loneliness as an adult, you still feel it. So, but we always want to hear from you guys, want to hear your perspective on the topics. You can always suggest topics. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be what we go with, but we always want the feedback. So, yeah, good, bad.
Absolutely, the interaction is important, and that's why we do this. To share our perspective, but also be a voice for others in the CP community. So your feedback and your suggestions and your ideas are, they're all important and meaningful. And so feel free to reach out, and we'll get back to you. So. Thanks for listening today, and we'll be back next week with another topic.
We'll talk to you guys then.